What if the money in your bank account isn't actually your property, but merely a low-interest loan you've granted to an institution that no longer has the intention or the capacity to pay it back? Most people believe that the greatest threat to their wealth is a market crash or a sudden bout of inflation. But they are looking at the scoreboard while the rules of the game are being rewritten in the locker room. 3 weeks ago, a legal shift occurred in the heart of Europe that should make every person holding Western currency sit up straight. It wasn't a riot, and it wasn't a stock market collapse. It was a signature on a document that effectively reclassified $100 billion of private assets into a new category of state-managed security. If you think this is just about geopolitics or faraway billionaires, you are missing the most important signal of the decade. This is the moment the administrative machine stops pretending that ownership is absolute. Before we dive into the mechanics of how this power grab is backfiring and what it means for your own savings, you need to understand that once the seal of private property is broken for one, the infrastructure is ready for everyone. If you value the truth behind the headlines, subscribe and hit the notification bell now, because the window to protect your position is closing faster than the system wants you to know. We are taught to believe that the system is a neutral referee, a set of rules that protects the industrious. But history shows that when the balance sheets of empires begin to bleed, the referee becomes a player. The European power grab we are witnessing today, the seizure and redirection of massive asset pools, is not an isolated event of justice. It is a desperate calibration. In the English-speaking world, we have long relied on the bedrock of the Magna Carta and the sanctity of the contract. Our entire economic dominance was built on the idea that if you earn it and hold it, it is yours. But the machine has reached a stage where liabilities exceed capacity. When the math no longer works, the system doesn't admit failure. It looks for assets. It starts with the unpopular, the outsiders, and the massive accounts that no one will cry for. But the mechanism being used, the legal spreadsheets of reclassification, is a universal tool. Think about the context of our current global crisis. For decades, the West has exported its inflation and imported the world's goods, backed by the promise that the banking system was the safest vault on earth. But the moment you use that vault as a weapon, you tell the rest of the world that the vault is no longer a storage unit, it's a trap. This $100 billion seizure hasn't just angered a few rivals. It has sent a shockwave through the global financial plumbing. Capital is like water. It seeks the path of least resistance and greatest safety. By seizing these assets, Europe hasn't shown strength. It has signaled that the rules are now conditional. This is the Stage 1, deception, moving rapidly into Stage 2, restriction. The system is telling you that your assets are yours only as long as your presence is convenient for the narrative. As we look at the historical precedents, from the transitions of the British Empire to the current American hegemony, the pattern is identical. First, the expansion of debt. Second, the reliance on administrative control. Third, the redefinition of ownership. We are currently in the third phase. In the coming minutes, I will show you how this specific grab is causing a massive capital flight that the mainstream media is desperate to ignore. The system is leaking, and when a system leaks, the people inside the splash zone are the last to be told to move. Reflect on this. If the highest levels of international law can be bypassed with a simple administrative reclassification, what makes you think your local regulations will stand when the pressure truly mounts? The true danger of a $100 billion seizure isn't the number itself. In a world of trillions, 100 billion is almost a rounding error for a central bank. The danger is the precedent. It is the architectural shift from rule of law to rule of necessity. When the European authorities decided to freeze and then effectively weaponize these assets, they didn't use soldiers. They didn't need to storm a vault. They used a keyboard. They changed the definition of custody. This is the part most people miss because it's boring. It's hidden in the fine print of banking directives and international settlement agreements. But this boring shift is how the administrative machine quietly expands until your ownership becomes conditional without you ever noticing a change in your daily life. Consider the history of the English-speaking nations. Our rise was fueled by the sanctity of property. It was the reason why people moved their gold to London and their dollars to New York. They knew that even if the government changed, the contract remained. But we are now witnessing the backfire effect. By breaking this fundamental trust, the system has triggered a global search for outside money. This is why we see the rush into gold, the surge in alternative settlement systems, and the quiet withdrawal of liquidity from Western European hubs. The power grab was intended to punish an enemy, but it has instead exposed the fragility of the entire Western financial architecture. It has shown that the system is no longer a neutral utility, but a political tool. When you see a bank in South Korea locking its doors to silver buyers, or a European capital implementing emergency wealth reporting requirements, you aren't seeing separate events. You are seeing the Stage 3 extraction phase. The system needs to know where everything is, because it needs to know what it can reclassify next. They won't call it a seizure when it happens to the middle class. They will call it a stability levy, a social contribution, or a mandatory transition fund. The language will be moral, but the result will be a transfer of wealth. The logic of the balance sheet is cold and indifferent. If the state owes more than it can ever tax, it must eventually take what it has previously guaranteed. This is the psychological wall that most people cannot climb. They believe that because they have followed the rules will protect them. But the rules are being updated in real time. In the past, if a king wanted your land, he had to fight you for it. Today, the administrative state simply adds a lien or changes the compliance threshold until the cost of keeping your asset exceeds the benefit of owning it. This is seizure by friction. It is a sophisticated, high-tech version of the ancient tithe, and it is being rolled out globally under the guise of managing the crisis. The $100 billion seizure was the loud crack in the ice. It was the signal that the frozen lake of international finance is no longer solid. If you are standing on that ice, you don't wait for the water to hit your knees before you start moving toward the shore. The final stage of this pattern is always the same, the reset. But the reset doesn't happen with a countdown timer. It happens when the crowd finally realizes that the exit is smaller than the room. The European power grab has accelerated this realization for the world's largest capital holders. We are seeing a historic migration of wealth toward jurisdictions that still prioritize the old rules of property. But for the average individual in the U.S., Canada, or the U.K., the exit isn't a geographic move. It's a shift in how you hold your labor and your savings. You have to understand counterparty risk. In the late stages of an empire, I own it quietly becomes I own a claim that someone must honor. In a moment of systemic stress, that difference is the only thing that matters. The 100 billion seizure was a weaponization of the financial system that has now turned into a self-inflicted wound. As capital flees, the system will become more restrictive to prevent the remaining wealth from leaving. This is why we see the push for central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and the elimination of physical cash. It's not about convenience. It is about creating a closed loop where reclassification can happen with a single line of code, and there is no outside money to flee to. The people who get crushed in these cycles are the ones who assume the default setting of the last 40 years will last forever. They are the ones who believe that the government's debt is their safety rather than their liability. We are late in the pattern. The signals are no longer subtle. Premiums on physical assets are rising, delivery delays are becoming common, and the narrative is shifting from growth to compliance. The machine is looking for assets, and it has already practiced on a $100 billion scale. This is the moment for rational urgency, not panic, but a sober assessment of where your assets live. Are they in the spreadsheet of the administrative machine, or are they in your direct control? The history of our culture is a history of fighting for the right to our own labor and its fruits. That fight hasn't ended. It has simply moved into the digital and legal realm. If this analysis has created a sense of clarity or a gut feeling that the machine is changing gears, then you are paying attention. The system depends on your distraction, but your survival depends on your focus. We are entering a period where the safe options will be the most dangerous, and the alternative options will be the only way to maintain your sovereignty. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel to track every move of this global reset as it unfolds. We are documenting the end of one era and the birth of another. Don't let your ownership become a mere permission. Protect your legacy, stay aware of the signals, and remember, the best time to build the ark was before the rain started. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next breakdown of the system.